As we head into the new year, many Canadians concerned with the state of the economy. New polling from Nanos Research ranks the cost of living and inflation as the main concerns of Canadians. Nick Nanos joining CTV News to discuss the results of his poll.
Almost half of Canadians are focused on those meat and potatoes issues, just basically paying the bills. And then you get stuff like the environment at 8, tied with healthcare at 8, war at 3, immigration 3, and taxes is starting to have a little bit of an uptake at 3. But pretty clear right now that people are worried about pocketbook issues this holiday season. Probably explains why they've been tightening their belt a little bit.
For more, I'm joined by Pedro Antunes, Chief Economist at the Conference Board of Canada. Thanks for joining us here live on CP24. All right, when that Nanos poll says people are concerned about the economy, I think what they're really worried about is just everything is more expensive. Obviously, the economy plays a large part into this. So what are the outlooks looking into next year about things just becoming a little bit more affordable?
Well, I think there has been good news of late to start the year, and that is essentially on the inflation front. We have seen inflation in most developed economies coming down. We've heard recently from the Fed in the U.S., the Federal Reserve Board, that they're planning to lower interest rates this year. So, good news on that front. And especially in Europe, we've seen inflation numbers come down very quickly, very markedly in the last reading. So I think that's very good news overall. Our central bank here in Canada is a little more, careful around the messaging, but I think we will probably see interest rates starting to come down on the latter part of this year. So that's good news, because the number one issue right now in terms of driving inflationary pressures is the cost of owning or renting a home. And I think a good portion of that is attributed to essentially people having to turn over their mortgages at much higher rates.
Right, and so like you mentioned, Tiff Macklem and the Bank of Canada kind of being a bit hush-hush about it, because there is that fear, right? If they come out there and say, hey, we're going to lower interest rates in the next couple of months, people are going to start, spending more and then driving inflation back up, correct?
Yeah, it's a careful line they're treading. And you remember back in the summer of 2023, we had a sense that the bank was going to pause, and all of a sudden, kind of markets took off again. Long-term bond yields came down. People started buying homes again, and home prices actually inched up a little bit, and that caused the central bank to really tighten out again. We saw another 50 basis points increase in interest rates because of that. So I think they're being quite careful. But nonetheless, we know that monetary policy is working. We've seen it, how it's affected consumer spending, especially in Canada. We've seen over the last, essentially 3 quarters now, most of 2023, has flatlined in terms of economic growth, especially because of kind of flat consumer spending. So monetary policy is having the intended impact. It's slowing the economy, and we are seeing the implications of that on inflation, on the inflation front. So good news all around. It's still really tough for a lot of households in this country that are facing still very high prices because of the hit to inflation, and on top of that, rent and affordability issues around homes are very, very difficult for many households.
Well, yeah. Speaking of affordability, food banks across the country really are seeing record amounts of people going to food banks on a daily basis. What's your take and your prediction heading into next year in terms of just the price of food?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real challenge. And I think the part of the issue here is there's a real dichotomy on how inflation and high interest rates are affecting different households. If you think about young households that have just taken up mortgages, or lower income households that spend most of their income on essentially food and basic items, food, transportation, housing, inflation has impacted those households a lot more than other households. Let's say older households, baby boom households who own their home and maybe don't have mortgages, are facing a very different reality with higher interest rates. And so this is a dichotomy that's really affecting some households, and it's been masked. Essentially, the overall impact on the economy is being masked by very strong population growth, which is kind of holding up kind of total consumer spending, despite the fact that on a per household basis, we're seeing declines. So hopefully, I think we're going to see things turn around this year coming, starting tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And, we will see, I think, inflationary pressures come down, interest rates come down, and hopefully some of the last remnants like food price inflation also starting to ease and essentially ease the pain and burden for those lower income households especially.
Now, I'm a slightly skeptical person, maybe because I've just been in the business a little bit too long, but, we have these major grocery corporations bringing in money. Prices are where they are. Well, what's really pushing them to lower prices? Just keep it the way it is. It's become the new norm. We're seeing that a lot now. This is just the new normal.
Well, I think it's really important, a very important point to differentiate between lower inflation and lowering prices. I think you're absolutely right. We're probably not going to see prices getting lowered a whole lot, in terms of food prices or gasoline and other prices. What we will see is the how should I say, the growth and the change in prices slowing. In other words, that's what's happened with inflation down to below 3%. We're seeing the incremental increases in prices slowing down to more normal levels. So it's not going to fix the affordability problem very quickly. And that's especially true when we think about housing. We've seen housing prices really ramp up in 2020, 21, 22. They've come down a little bit, but they're going to stay fairly high. And, we might see home prices inch down or level off a little bit more at the start of this year. But I don't think we're going to fix the affordability issue overnight. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, I think Tiff Macklem said we're kind of in a transitioning period right now. 2024 could be maybe better towards the end of the year, but we'll have to see. And I'm sure we'll chat with you once we're living through it. Pedro Antunes, Chief Economist at the Conference Board of Canada, thank you so much, and have a happy New Year early.
Thank you. And to you too.
Thank you very much.